by using a little masking tape and a magic eraser to create some of the masks in the boats that I've done. And the probably need to do one over here at least. It's kind of like the same as those. We have another boat that needs one. We'll do one here. And if you don't know about this technique, it's a lifesaver, because you can paint the background solid and dark, and then come in and lift out a line like this. It could be a line on a street, lines on a street, the crosswalk stuff. It could be, I did an airport runway. I mean, airport, with planes sitting outside at the gates, and there were lots of lines painted on there. And I just used this method to get some lines back in after I'd already painted the all of the things that I wanted to have, on that tarmac. Now, what did I do with my blade? There it is. It rolled away. Okay. So the blade, using just an X-Acto blade, I will create some of this, some of these marks. Now I put some into the wet paint, but there are going to be some others. Now up in here, there's got to be I don't know what these are called. These little, there's some cross pieces that happen. And anyway, the point is here, you need some lines, some linear treatment, and one way to do that, I'm not cutting, I'm using the edge of the blade. So for instance, right in here, I'm using kind of the back side of the blade, actually. Now some of you are freaking out because you're thinking he's cutting his paper. Well, I'm picking up the top layer of it and adding some little bits of light into this that are linear. Now we have lots of boats back in here. There's lots of lines going through here. So a lot of this can be done by scraping back in and getting a little bit of that back. You can also, where there's an area that you've built up too much and you want to show, like I lifted these off with the magic eraser and the masking tape, but you can also lift some things off by just using a little bit of water, and you're and just lifting back some of the paint with a paper towel. So you get more linear effects back into it than what you had originally painted. You painted over a lot of things that you maybe wanted to keep, so you can always go back. The watercolor is not one of those mediums that you can't return to some of the things that you had wanted to have in there in the first place.
What is your little white sponge? What's it called?
This is a Mr. Clean Magic Eraser sponge. That was what the question was. This one is a dirty one, but that's what you use. They're just a typical household sponge. So when I go in at this point, I would go in and do some opaque treatments as well. Here's some titanium white watercolor. It's watercolor paint. It's not gouache. I like to use watercolor. Not that it matters. Gouache would work too.
Michael, where is the light coming from? Some of it appears to
The light, as I talked about it initially, there it is a day with some. It's a morning. To me, it's a morning. There's this haziness, this fogginess, but this is waterfront, so there's always foggy areas. The light is also bouncing in, coming in from the right side in the morning light, and hitting these boats, giving us these sharp angles of light. So here's a painted in, vertical. Now that feels different than the ones that I masked out. And then there's some of these things, I don't even know what they are. I guess they're rolled up sails that are sometimes angled like that. And so these small indications are pretty much pure pigment right out of the tube. Now, if there's a little bit of water mixed into them, they're going to lighten and not be as white when they get when you get past the when it gets dried in a little bit.
How do you keep that masking tape from sticking?
How do you keep the masking tape from sticking? Well, it does stick, and that's what you want while you're doing the when you're doing the initial painting of the you're wiping off the paint with the sponge, but it doesn't stick so hard that it hurts anything. It's meant to come up. So anyway, but I do prefer I prefer a good solid strong regular paint, a regular masking tape versus a lightweight drafting tape or something like that, which some people would use for their masking, but it to me it doesn't. You don't have enough. What's the word? It doesn't stick well enough for me, for my taste, for what I'm trying to do. So here I am just using a little bit of this opaque white to accent a few things. Put a little bit of light on a couple of objects here, maybe. My figure here that I have I lost his hair a little bit there. I would do some of these down in the water to repeat as well, but they need to probably do a little bit of the swiggle that happens on this water.
When would you use titanium buff?
The titanium buff that I have is the one right next to the white over here. If you can see it, well, I guess you can't. The white is obvious white, and then the titanium buff is just an off white. It really is nice for certain things where I don't want to go as bright white. There are times for that. So anyway, those of you that came on and joined us on Facebook and YouTube, this was just a short little segment of one of my workshops, my online mini workshops. So I'm glad you could join, but we're going to go back to where I'm teaching the rest of the group who